be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure. We will be sure. Oh, glory. I love that song. We have no rights to this song by John Legend and Common, but I still believe in the strong message of being able to cry glory when the victory comes, when the war is won and the victory comes, we can cry glory. We are honored tonight to welcome to our platform. But let me just say, welcome once again and good evening. I am the Reverend Sherry Austin. I am the founder and convener of Beacon of Hope. And tonight we are going live addressing the issues of the land here in the state of Georgia. But I want to say to each of you who are joining us tonight that it will have an effect all over the world, because if it happens to one state, I'm sure it's going to have a triple effect that goes across the land. So we're here tonight, and I have so much. I have such powerful panelists. I don't want to talk anymore. I just want to introduce you to our panelists. You may know some, but you're going to meet some more so that they can help us in the response to this Senate Bill 202. Everybody knows all about it. It's been on the news. And I have not really been involved in these kinds of issues, but ever since Rayshard Brooks and George Floyd, I have been called into a battle to take a stand for so many of the issues in which we are dealing with. So tonight, we are going to address the issue of this State Bill 202. And to give us the information about it and to raise some questions, and we're going to have dialogue. I have an awesome group of panelists here tonight. Just look at them. The first panelist we have is the Reverend Dr. Judge Penny Brown Reynolds. She is the founder, president, and CEO of Divine Destiny Enterprises, designed to strengthen families. And she's also an Emmy-nominated national TV host of Judge Penny's Family Court. She's a preacher. I mean, a preacher. She's a professor. She teaches issues in law, politics, and religion. This Judge Penny Brown Reynolds was appointed by the first judge appointed by Governor Barnes as a Superior Court judge. Currently, in addition to being a professor, the co-pastor, she co-pastors with her husband, the Reverend Edward Reynolds, at Midway Missionary Baptist Church. Welcome, Reverend Dr. Judge Penny Brown Reynolds.
Thank you.
Next we have the Reverend Timothy McDonald. He is the pastor of First Iconium Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia. He's the founder of the African American Leadership Council and chair of the People of the American Way. He's always been involved and focused on the improvement of social justice, economic empowerment, and criminal justice. He is the former president of the Concerned Black Clergy, the national director of Operation Breadbasket, SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. This is the Reverend Dr. Timothy McDonald. Then we have attorney Robert James. He is the former DeKalb County district attorney. He has represented hundreds of violent crimes, sexual assault victims. He now is in his private practice, and he continues to seek justice for those same victims. He litigates civil suits against businesses and property owners. He has been a litigation instructor for prosecuting attorney council of Georgia. He's labeled in Atlanta's best trial lawyer by the Rolling Out magazine, and he is seen on ID Channel, Court TV, local news outlets. He's listed in several documents like the National Law Journal and Who's Who in Law and Accounting. He joins us here from Murfreesboro, Tennessee. He received his Juris Doctorate from Georgia State University College of Law. Received attorney Robert James. And then next, we have the Reverend Shannon Eugene Jones. This young man, he's the founding pastor of the Gathering Baptist Church of College Park. He's the founder movement of CHHANG, the conscious hip hop advancement necessary for global empowerment. Isn't that something? He's a journalist. He's an Atlanta police chaplain. He's over people, over politics in South Fulton. He ran for one of the political positions here. He also serves on boards and agencies, really too numerous to mention. Currently, he is the 11th president of the Concerned Black Clergy of Atlanta. Meet Reverend Shannon Jones. We are so honored to have each of you here this evening, and we're just going to get right into the questions. Now, audience, I want you to know that we welcome your questions, your comments. We also want you to show us that you are here from wherever you are all over the United States. We also want to let you know that we are here to give you information. We want you to be informed. When I came up with this idea, the word came to me when we are dealing with this Senate Bill 202 that is changing the voter laws for us here in Georgia. Many of us cannot get out in the streets and we can't put boots on the ground. And so with this pandemic, we really don't know what to do. So I wanted to call some of these experts who might be able to give us some insight on what it is that we can do as we sit at home. We don't want to sit and do nothing. So I want to start if I'm going to ask, and this is going to be open dialogue, and I want you all to dialogue amongst you, but there'll be some questions that you may feel that might fit your expertise. But if I could get someone to tell us what this Senate Bill 202 voter law says. Give us a few points that perhaps affect each of you. Maybe I can get something from each of you. What does this thing speak to you? Judge Penny, I'm going to ask you to go first.
Good evening, and thank you. I am so privileged to be here with my esteemed colleagues, both in the ministry and in law. And certainly with you, you've been my role model for many, many years. I'm a part of the Beacon of Hope organization that you have started, and I'm just honored to be here. I think that all of us will have an opportunity to kind of address what this bill entails, because it's a lot to it. We know that more than anything, it is a response to deep embedded racism and white supremacy. And at its heart, that's the basis of it. But let's go with this. Let's back it up even more. It is a response to what they have deemed as baseless claims at the 2020 election, an election that had claimed to say that there was widespread fraud, and without question, it was proven that these claims were baseless. But that is merely a cover to be able to create this bill, which is really, with a big bow on top of it, voter suppression at its best. And it is really, as I see it, an issue of not just politics, but morality because what it is dehumanizes people to say that certain individuals are not worthy of voting while others are. And because we don't deem those people valuable, then we are going to make it more difficult for them to vote. And so what has happened is, and I'm going to give overall, and then I think everybody can go and separate each part of it. It was a mixed bag, and it's a mixed bag because we're living in a society now where what certain people in political realm wants to do is say, don't believe what your eyes see, don't believe what your ears hear, and do not process what your intellect allows you to process when you read it. And so I took the time to read the bill. So I don't need anyone from any party to tell me what it does and what it does not. I know that I have the intellect, just like everybody else, to read. And although we know that for 280 years, it was forbidden for us to read, but now that we can read, we are empowered to see what is being taken away from us. So overall, I think that it's a moral issue that goes against humanity when you try to take away something that we have a legal right to have. And then I know everybody wants to kind of go and pick it apart otherwise, but let's now go to the bill. I'll give you one aspect that is egregious. All politics is supposed to be local. And so if all politics is local, what that means you give credit to the people who are in a local jurisdiction to be able to decide the affairs for those individuals. This bill adds increased state power over counties and local jurisdictions, and is basically saying that they cannot handle their affairs. Republican Party, who has always been about, local politics. Let's local school boards do this. What they're basically saying is the bill itself. I'm not pontificating. I'm just going by what the bill says. It removes the Secretary of State as the chair of the state elections board. It removes accountability then of the people who votes on a constitutional officer to allow the General Assembly, since 2005 has been Republican, to then be able to remove the Secretary of State, who's chair of the elections division, who can then, by majority of the board's vote, tamper with and remove those persons who are over local election boards. That's dangerous. Why? Because in the place of the Secretary of State, they get to appoint a nonpartisan person to sit in that chair, who nonpartisan appointed, who is not accountable to the people by vote.
Wow.
And so that absolutely at its core of democracy undermines the very process of what is fair and justice. And because what it does is there is no accountability. You're no longer accountable to the people, you're accountable to a party.
Wow.
That's not what justice is. So that's one very troubling aspect for me, is that it increases state power over local governments.
Awesome. Wow, that's some heavy duty stuff. And we changed from being a red state to a blue state. And so now that's the underlying core, because we're now Democratic run in a sense. Would you all say that?
Well, not the state of Georgia.
Not the state of, come on, Reverend McDonald.
In the state of Georgia, all three branches of our government are still controlled by the Republican Party, that being the governor, the executive, the legislature, the legislative, and the Senate, the judicial. All three branches in Georgia, which is the only way they were able to get this bill through. And the vote was absolutely along party lines. Because they are the majority and control all three branches of government, the Republicans,
Wow.
That is the only way they were able to get this bill through. They call this bill a voter integrity bill. one of the biggest lies that has ever been told. We set record numbers turnout this past election, both in the November as well as the January senatorial races. Georgia kind of led the nation in voter participation, so much so that we knew in November that something was going to be coming down. It's not about fraud. That's their narrative. It's not. Georgia 3 times had to verify its votes, and there was virtually 0.0001% of voter fraud that was found. So it's not about fraud. It's about turnout. And what Judge has just said is absolutely true. For me, that is the most egregious part of the legislation, taking away the role of the Secretary of State, who is an elected officer. And I don't care if he even was a Democrat. That would be a bad, terrible, partisan move. They've also shortened, believe this, to early voting. We work. They want to do early voting from 9 to 5. We're still at work. We're trying to get home. Prior, it was at least until 7 o'clock. And in some counties, it even went beyond 7 to allow people to vote. There are about 9, in my opinion, very negative things in this bill that makes it very clear. Secondly, it's not just Georgia. There are at least 44 other states where the same kind of voter suppression legislation has been introduced. And so we know it's not about voter integrity. We know it's not about what they say. That's their narrative that they're trying to sell to the people. But it's hard to sell a lie, only but for so long. So we're trying to make sure that our people understand the negative impact, the ballot box, the outside box that we used to have. They want to reduce it. It says, okay, we'll allow one outside ballot box per 100,000 voters. But for Fulton County that had over 30 of the boxes, that means we're only going to have about 4 or 5. Now, and then they have to be inside of a building. So that totally defeats the purpose of having the ballot box in the first place. So what we want to listeners to understand, don't buy the narrative. Don't buy their narrative. It is based on a falsehood. It is based on a lie. No matter how they say it, no matter how softly they say it, it is wrong, and it suppresses particularly African American voters, but it will ultimately oppress all voters, even Republican voters, and they're going to end up hurting themselves trying to hurt Black and brown people. So we want your listening audience to understand we are absolutely opposed to Senate Bill 202. We will fight it. There's already litigations against it, and the faith community is stepping up to the plate, and we're going to make sure that people know the truth about this bill that passed the state of Georgia.
Wow, how awesome is that? Attorney James, I see you sitting up. I see you live and ready. Come on, tell us.
Well, I don't have a lot to say. The reverends / judge have said, have really said it all in a very astute and detailed analysis of it. So not a lot to say, just sort of a general comment, which is, listen, this bill came on the heels of perhaps the most integrous election, in the history of the United States, right? We've evolved to a place where, we have real election security. And so to call it, the election integrity, anything, it's a cruel joke. So what it is it's a setup, right? Because the effect of everything that Reverend McDonald and Judge Brown Reynolds just said was to essentially lengthen lines. If you don't reduce turnout, you expand the physical footprint, the number of people that are actually standing in line, which means that you're going to suffer attrition, And so, you change the laws around the drop boxes, you change the laws around the absentee period. And then you say, okay, by the way, if you're going to be standing in line for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, because we all remember the election when President Obama, ran, and we in our communities the lines were just horrendous. They were so long. Well, no one can bring you water, no one can bring you food, no one can bring any level of assistance to you. So if you have an elderly woman out there, and she's in her 80s, all right, and she's standing in line voting. If you have a younger person, perhaps, but suffers some sort of disability, and they're standing in line voting, and it's 80 degrees outside or 85 degrees outside, or it's raining, or any number of things that you suffer when you stand outside, they've actually criminalized the act of aiding and assisting and being humanitarian and offering that person something as basic and as simple as water. And what's really sad and unfortunate is that, and guys, I know y'all know because you follow laws, almost always when we have a law that is proposed at the legislature, it follows an identified problem, and not only do we not have an identified problem, but we have improvement here. And so I hope that they're eaten alive in the courts on a constitutional basis. And I'm not going to get, too deep into the constitutional P's and Q's of it, but I think they have some problems. And I hope, the court and the bench calls it out and calls it for what it is, which is Jim Crow 2.0 and voter suppression.
Wow. Jim Crow 2.0. So I was going to ask this question. So, and I think you've spoken to it. What is the pure motive behind this thing? What is it? Go ahead. Come on.
I'd like to take a stab at that. First and foremost, I don't agree that there was not voter fraud in this election. I believe there was. I believe that the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, reached out to the Secretary of State of Georgia and attempted to, by any means necessary, at that moment, he had grabbed on to the words of Malcolm X, by any means necessary, give me this election, by any means necessary, give us this election. What is at the root of this is white racism, white supremacy, and the protection of white privilege. It is American apartheid. It is Jim Crow 2.0. It is white folk fearing that this country is browning every day, and that by the majority rule, that the political power will shift. It is ALEC in 46 states trying to take these copycat laws and increase this supremacy protection. I'm reminded of the words of Dr. King. We romanticize Dr. King, but what every now and then, it soothes the soul to go and grab the radical Dr. King. 66, 1967, 1968, Dr. King. Dr. King said that most Americans were unconscious racists. He said that he underestimated that America was deeply entrenched in racism. And then he went on and said that Blacks and their allies should seize political power, that we had to gain political power so that we could restructure the American society by solving the riddles of poverty and economic inequality. And what we saw in this past election is the gaining of that political power. We saw the voter turnout, as Reverend McDonald said, and that was deeply problematic to them. And so they conjured up, with the help of ALEC and perhaps 3 or 4 legal clanspersons, this legislation. And we've got to do everything that we can legally. We have to do everything in terms of placing our body in the struggle, because this is a moral disgrace. And if we would allow this, then we would be regressing back to the days of, yes, Jim Crow 2.0, or perhaps we would just skip the 2.0, because the next legislative session, if they would do this, the next legislative, we might just jump to Jim Crow 4.0. They might jump over the 2 and the 3 and give us the 4. So we've got to raise hell, because hell is all around us. When dirt and dust is around you and you start marching, you start kicking your feet, you start moving, that dirt is going to kick up. It's going to get around you. If you want to stay clean and pristine around a dirty situation, be still, be frozen, be afraid. But if you don't like that, if you want to march and to move against it, you're going to have to kick up the dirt that's around you. And dirt and racism and supremacy is all around us with this. So we've got to raise a little hell. And you can't get to heaven, Reverend Austin, without raising a little hell.
Amen, my brother. I want to go back just a little bit because all of our listeners are not as familiar with the terminologies that you're using. And so when you said we're looking at browning, just break that down for some folks who may not know what that is.
So our Latino communities, Asian communities, Blacks are giving birth to children at greater numbers than that of whites, particularly the Latino community. And so we see that in just a few years, the majority population of this country will be brown. And so that's what we mean when we talk about the browning of America. And supremacy and privilege is afraid of that.
Wow. Awesome. Thank you so much for that explanation. And you're talking about
I hope I explained that right. If there's others that would like to add to it, please do so.
If I just wanted to get that cleared up because we hear the terminology and a lot of people don't, we hear it and we just don't know what they're talking about. But
he said it perfectly. So
yes,
we're moving into a minority majority that will ultimately come by year 2040. And they see that. And so there is a shift that is happening even in the South. And so what is happening, and I didn't come up with this, but Senator Warnock did. He said, rather than try to create a platform and principles that people would gravitate to pick and vote for a party, they want to pick their voters, which means rather than say we will be righteous, we will be equitable, we will have policies that are not just for the elite and ruling class, but for various policies and laws that will support the masses. They would then decide that what our platforms stand for, which is not inclusion, we will then continue to manifest that oppression. They're scratching their heads, shocked at the outrage, because you see, this didn't just start now. This started in the election with Stacey Abrams, because the suppressor in chief ended up moving and was elevated based on principles of doing voter suppression. So now, when you've gotten away with it once, it's like a cancer, it metastasizes. And so President Jones is clear about this, because they were able to somewhat get away with it that time. The backlash came in that we'd made a decision, we being those righteous people who decided to vote in spite of everything. Do you know that when you pass by certain precincts that are of color and there are long lines, but then you go in other areas in other counties that are majority white and there are no lines, then your consciousness as an elected leader should say something's wrong with this. Now I'm speaking like this so I can appeal to others other than just the people who are in our choir. I want you to hear a reasonable approach at what I'm saying. Why are they afraid? What do you fear? If your principles and your platforms are as good as you say they are, then why would you try to stop people from voting? But what we cannot do, we cannot sit back and allow them to control the narrative and pretend that this is normalized. And we can't allow them to try to say, well, what we're going to do is we're going to take away voting boxes, but then we're going to guarantee that you have boxes. Well, why don't you guarantee that we have boxes and increase boxes? It's not one or the other. Why would you say that we're only going to give you 29 days of absentee voting when all of us know, I can tell you, I'm a witness, I didn't get my absentee ballot in time, even though I sent it in months earlier So it made me have to put on all of my protective gear and go in and vote. Why would you decrease time and not expand time? You're doing that because you want to narrow the kinds of people that go and vote. Reverend McDonald, Attorney James, everybody has said it all. But the worst thing that we need to do, we're not on the defensive because we have the fact on our side. You are responding to the big lie, baseless claims. And what we know as lawyers, and I know Attorney James will say this, yes, you filibuster when the facts are not on your side. The facts are on our side. If you limit people from voting, you are suppressing their vote. I'll give you another thing. How many people you believe in the middle of a pandemic or otherwise would have to go and make a copy of their driver's license? They have taken away the two-step process. You remember how you would sign your ballot, then you would put it in an envelope, and you would sign it again. That was for what? Authentication of your signature, right? That's gone now. So what do we want? We want different forms of ID. So what I want you to do is please know this to our audience. Anybody can make anything sound reasonable. It's like we're dealing with the murder of the issue of Mr. George Floyd. And the prosecutor said in the closing argument, don't allow anyone to make you think that what your eyes have seen is not what you see. And I'm saying to you, no matter how many times you say something is fraudulent, no matter how many times you claim something happened when it didn't happen, it doesn't make it so. What we have to deal with is facts. I believe that the law is on our side, but as Attorney James will know, that many judges were placed on the court. And so a lot of times righteousness doesn't always come from the courts. We know that with Plessy versus Ferguson, and we can name a whole line. So what we have to do, in my estimation, is fight the good fight. We have to do it with the courts, the faith community, because it's always been about the faith community. It's been about the pulpit. The Black pulpit has always been a place of protest because we all gather there. People underestimate the power of preachers and the prophetic and what that means. And so I am very, very believing that even in the midst of everything that has transpired, that the victory, that right will still be victorious over wrong in this process.
All right. Attorney James, when I see you sit up, I know you got a word.
Well, it's a short word, Reverend Austin, very short word. And, as you're aware, my father, played football. And so I followed football and was in athletics my whole life until I went to law school. And Al Davis, the famed or infamous, depending on whether you like the Raiders or not, owner of the Raiders, longtime owner of the Raiders, had a phrase that he coined, and it said, just win, baby, win. All right. And what that means is that winning solves a lot of problems. All right. We've got an election coming up. All right. And I'll say just win, baby, win. Because what we have to do is that we have to organize. We have to make sure that we get our people to the polls. We have to make sure that we have ID drives. We have to make sure that, that if you have means, if you have money, whether it's $10 or $10,000, that you're contributing to people like, the good Reverend Dr. Senator Raphael Warnock, to make sure that he goes back. And we have to also make sure, most importantly here, that we take the governor's mansion and that we start working on the legislature, the attorney general's office, which is very important in this process, and the other constitutional offices in the state. Why? Because once we are in power, all right, and the numbers are trending in the direction that we will be, all right, you can throw up all the laws you want to, but at the end of the day, you can't stop this tidal wave that's coming. I was sitting in a room when I was DA. It's a group called the Donkey Club, and it's a bunch of, Democratic folks that sit around, in downtown Atlanta, and they talk about things. And I won't use the word pontificate because, there's some fundraisers and stuff in the room, and they actually do some things. But, a lot of talking. And it was about 10, 12 years ago. And they had demographers come in the room, all right, demographers. And they said by 2020, all right, Georgia will be ripe for a Democratic takeover. All right. What happened in 2020? All right. They started talking about the number of Black and brown children, to your point about Browning, Reverend Jones, that were in elementary, middle, and high schools, outnumbering the number of white children. And they also started talking about, quite frankly, something that a lot of people don't talk about, which is the effect that it has on our white brothers and sisters. These young white folks that are growing up in the city of Atlanta and out in Cobb County and out in Gwinnett County have Black principals. When they go to work at Chick-fil-A, they got Black bosses and managers. Not growing up like us Xers or boomers, right? Where nobody in authority except for maybe a pastor and maybe one teacher was Black. These white children grow up with Black authority figures. And so when it comes time for them to see those people as bosses, all right, as elected officials, they're much more amenable to voting for an African American than what they would have been just 20 years ago. And I'm starting to see it on the ground in places like Gwinnett and Cobb County. And you're seeing the changes, not just because of the influx of African Americans out there, but also the change in perspective in our white brothers and sisters as well, because, they're coming up different than the way that I was raised or the way that my parents were raised. But if we win this next election, all right, we can start talking about repealing laws and setting that which is wrong right. That is the quickest, the most expeditious way to handle our business, is to make sure that we show up and show out in this next election. It doesn't mean we don't challenge the validity, the constitutionality of it, because we have to. It's got to be, look, they're not mutually exclusive, right? We can't go back to these fights that we had throughout the civil rights movement and the struggle, where you had one arm fighting the other saying, well, you shouldn't be fighting it in the streets because we're fighting it in court. And then the other arm saying, well, we're registering voters, so you should be doing this. We have to do all of that. But ultimately, we have to win. And when we do win, we will have our opportunity to set it right. And I think it's going to be sooner rather than later. We're not talking about another 20 years. We're talking about the next 4 to 8 years here in Georgia.
Wow. Win, baby, win, he said.
And he's so correct, Dr. Sherry. Let me just say, Attorney James, this is a multicultural issue. That election, that the last one we had, was won not only by African Americans, but by young people. And young people are outraged by this. I know students that I have taught, they know fairness. And so I'm glad you brought up that point, that this is bigger, because what we do know is something that I was reading in a book, that at the time when the Civil War was about to end, Abraham Lincoln was in the White House and they were warning him about going forward with this. And he looked up and he said that anyone who tries to take freedom away from someone is not deserving to hold freedom themselves.
Wow.
And I remember that just going through me, that Abraham Lincoln had said that. And I thought about the multiculturalism, how in this last election, it was young white kids and Asian kids and Hispanic kids. That's when you know that right is on our side, because it's bigger. It's bigger. Just like when we had the issues of the suppression with our Asian brothers and sisters. It was also the Black community and Black clergy and all of us that have come together. Whether people like it or not, this is America. It is the melting pot of people from all races, and we are better when we come together and we come together as one. And there are a lot of people that fear that, because there's a lot of money being made by keeping us apart.
Absolutely.
Reverend Jones, I know you're sitting on the edge of your seat waiting, and I want you to go ahead and say this, but I got two really good questions, because the main question for our forum tonight is, what can we, as the common folks who are sitting at home, who do not have all of this wisdom and information about what can you tell us what to do? Go ahead, Reverend Jones, and say what you're going to say. And then can you all come back and help us as the common folks? We're not in law. We're not in positions. We're sitting at home and we're social distancing and we're isolating, but what can we do?
So Reverend James and Reverend Dr. Judge Penny just pretty much talked about this. Attorney James pretty much just Freudian slip, just explain to us about this Rainbow Coalition. I think what is very important for us to be mindful of is that right now we are watching how someone holds power and how someone wills the power that they hold. But there's a big difference between someone holding power and someone having power. And what we have to remember is that as a people, as this Rainbow Coalition of those who love and seek justice, we have the power. And the power that you see, the governor who managed, I just want to run back to this because I want to say this, because in all of their chasing the writing of our elections, this man managed, Brian Kemp, managed the election process. And he was running as a candidate for governor in that very same process. It is what Red Fox says. It's who you believe, you, me, or your lying eyes? What are you believing? I mean, they are literally doing this right before our eyes. So we have to begin to organize. We have to do everything that I'm hearing said here. It's a both and, burn the candle both. So we need to be in the courts. We need to be in the streets. The preachers need to be preaching this. We need to be helping our brothers and sisters who pastor and who are not politicized and radicalized. We need to be helping them with organizing sermons and Bible studies around justice. We need to remind them that Jesus was executed by the state. We need to remind them that the elite did not like him. We have to remind them that God is against supremacy and against injustice and against Rome then and now. We need to wake them up to that reality. And then we have to remind them who has the power. We have the power. And Kemp is borrowing the power from us. And all we have to do, when you loan somebody something, all you have to do is take it back.
Take it back.
Reverend, let me add a couple more things if I can. And just to kind of make it as plain as possible. When Kemp was Secretary of State, more than 1 million people were removed from the voting rolls. When the governor's race was held, 5 million people voted. The difference between Kemp and Stacey Abrams was about 55,000 votes out of 5 million. During this past election, Trump, Biden, less than 12,000 votes out of over 6 million votes. Just like we see it, they see it. What they're trying to do is, where can we find 12,000 votes? What do we need to put in place? What legislation? That all we need is 12,000 votes. All we need is 55,000 votes. What can we put in place that will suppress across the state of Georgia Black folks by at least 55,000? Imagine, as we started out this conversation, with them taking over state control, if they took over Fulton County, if the state, and said, we disagree with your outcomes, that's a whole lot more than 11,780 votes that Trump called the Secretary of State trying to find and locate. That's a lot more than the difference between Governor Kemp and Stacey Abrams, just in one single county. Now, we got to understand, Reverend Love used to always say, only elected and appointed officials set public policy. We can influence it, ministers, community leaders, all of us, but only elected and appointed officials set public policy, set legislation. What we did in an unprecedented manner, we voted in numbers that dumbfounded them, that sent them and really made them crazy, because they know what they're doing now is a lie, and they know what they're doing is false, but they don't care. Understand that in 2016, when Donald Trump ran for president, all three branches of the national government were in the Republican Party's hand. He was the president, They had the majority in the Congress, and they had the majority in the Senate. 4 years later, all three branches of government are now in the Democratic hands. That has never happened in that short a period of time, 4 years, in the history of this country. Never happened. And so they are scared. And that's why it's in 46, at least 46 other states. What we got to do is vote. That's what the attorney was saying. We got to still vote. We got to do what we've always done. And we got to turn out in even higher numbers. And the thing that we got to understand, which I told I wanted to mention before we got off tonight, is that we got to teach our dollars some sense. That's one of our phrases of concerned Black clergy. Teach our dollars some sense. Understand that corporations
in the box there.
give donations. Corporations have lobbyists over there at the General Assembly. Corporations put out millions of dollars to get certain people elected and appointed because they are the ones who set public policy. The reason why the faith community went after the corporations is because they were too silent while this bill was being debated. You didn't hear anything from the top 10 corporations in the state of Georgia on this bill. And after the bill had passed and after the bill was signed, then they want to say stuff.
Right.
Well, it's too late then.
Right.
And so we had a meeting, the faith community and some of these corporate heads. That included Coca-Cola, Delta, Microsoft, Aflac, we sent invitations all of these. And we got some very good response. And we got some commitments from some of these corporations. They have always worked with the civil rights movement. They have always worked to increase democracy. But this time on this bill, they were silent. So what recourse do we have? We have the recourse. We were set in the boycott. The only thing that brought them to the table was the faith community, civil rights community, and other community leaders threatening a boycott. That brought them to the table. They want to talk now. They want to negotiate now. But on tomorrow, there was some who just totally ignored us, who did not respond to the letters, did not respond to the calls, did not respond by email or text or anything. Well, tomorrow, I just want to announce that this happened today, that we're going to be assembling at 12 o'clock noon at 4235 New Snap Fingerwoods, ever indicated right off of I-20 and Wesley Chapel, 12 o'clock. There is a huge store over there that we'll be in front of. We'll announce it tomorrow, but you should know this store. And I just say a number of the corporations responded to us. We met with them. We talked with them. We fine. We're moving forward. But those who ignored us, I'm talking about Black folk, did not respond, did not email, did not call back. They are going to be targeted. And we're starting tomorrow, 12 o'clock, right at I-20 in Wesley Chapel. We'll be across the street, let me say, from Home Depot tomorrow at 12 o'clock. And we'll be making announcements about how we're going to move forward and inviting the community to join us as we move forward. You got to teach your dollars some sense and don't nothing talk like money. Money talks.
That's exactly where I was going, Reverend Timothy. Teach your dollars some sense. I was going to ask you what the effects of this boycott would do. It sounds like we are about to set this place on fire with standing before them and seeing. Here's the real issue. How can we get our people to teach their dollars some sense? How can we get our people to boycott? And what will be how can we make that happen?
Well, we're going to make it happen because we already had great conversations. When the faith community, I mean, you go all the way back to Montgomery bus boycott. Right. Initially, it was one day. They were going to not ride the buses. And then it grew to 30 days. And then it ended up to more than a year. I mean, you have to be very fluid. But let's be for real. What they have done in this passing of this bill has angered Black folk. It has angered brown people and people of color. We see them right in front of us, like the knee right on our neck, choking us to death, trying to take away our vote. Because now we see Georgia changed the Senate. The 2 senators that we sent to Washington changed the Senate. That changes public policy. That changes public policy. That change. You would have never gotten that stimulus check if we didn't have them 2 senators from Georgia.
You're
You would have
right.
never gotten. You're enjoying that check. I hope you gave your tithe too. I'm talking to the folks who watching us right now. Hope y'all gave y'all tithe too. But you never could have got that stimulus check if Georgia had not sent those 2 senators to Washington. We got to continue this. We ain't going back. I ain't going back. I don't care what Kemp does. I don't care what S202 says. We're going to turn out our people. We're going to mobilize. We're going to teach our dollars some sense. And if you're with us, we're going to support you. And if you ain't with us, we're going to boycott you. And I think that Black people and brown people are ready now for a boycott. We're going to put our money where our mouth and where our votes are. And we're going to get our rights. And we're going to get them during this upcoming election. And we're going to show them that no weapon formed against us are going to be
prosper. Thank you so very much. This has been so awesome. The time goes by so fast. And I've heard so much tonight, but I want to just ride on that Teach Your Dollar Some Sense. And on tomorrow at 12 noon, we need to get everybody out there at, what's the address? 4235?
4235 New Snap, right there behind that.
New Snapfinger Road, across from
right behind that Kentucky Fried Chicken. Y'all know what that
to all my listening audience, I need you all to show up. Do you want us to wear a color? You just want us to show up?
Just show up.
Just show up, and I see all of you.
$1, $5, or $10. We teaching our dollars some sense.
All right, we're going to do that. Now, here, we just have a few minutes left, and I just want each of you, if you could give one statement that would speak something to the listening audience about what we need to do. I know the word is to get out to vote. We need to find some people that we need to support, and we need to start talking and see if we can get some folks to come with us to this boycott. But we are all, listen, wear your mask, social distance, wash your hands, and make sure that you do your part. Y'all, we'll start with you, Reverend Dr. Judge Penny Brown Reynolds. Just give us a final statement because we're on our way off. Our time goes by so fast.
Yes, just quickly, thank you again for having this discussion. The main thing I want people to have is just a resolve. We know what we have been through. God did not bring us through this pandemic. We went through an entire summer of protesting injustices. And just like we are angry over the injustice of what we're seeing happening to our brothers and sisters, we ought to be angry. This is a good angry to be. And that what we need to do is too many people died and paid a price for that vote. And so we just need to be determined that by any means necessary, we're getting to those polls by any means necessary.
All right. Attorney James, give us a word.
Win, baby, win. That's what I'll start. Win, baby, win. Vote. All right. Vote. Take 10, 15, 20, 30 people, your mama, them, daddy, everybody with you to vote. If they don't have rides, all right, drive them to the polls, okay? Contribute to campaigns, all right? Put your money where your mouth is. I've run for office before, and it's hard, all right? And it's going to be even harder for, Stacey Abrams, when she runs for governor, and Raphael Warnock when he runs for re-election, all right? Takes a lot of money. And so whether you got $10 or $10,000, you can't say you're part of the struggle if you're not willing to make sacrifices to be a part of that struggle. And you got to make that big sacrifice, which is the one in your pocketbook. Okay. All right. And on top of that, make sure you get connected to an organization that is working for change. All right. Whether that's the Concerned Black Clergy or the NAACP or any organization, make sure you get part of a larger group that is organizing to move people in our community to change things, particularly this Senate bill, and to get folks elected. You can do a lot on your own, but collectively we can move mountains and change the world.
Awesome. Collectively, we can move mountains. Win, baby, win. Contribute. Pull out. Look, get that $1, that $5. We're gonna give our dollars some sense. All right, Reverend Jones.
Wake up
Wake
up and stop seeking comfort.
Mm.
The things that break God's heart must break our hearts. Wake up and stop seeking comfort. Martin Niemöller, that German theologian and pastor, said first they came for the socialists, and I didn't speak up because I was not a socialist. And then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't speak up because I was not a trade unionist. And then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak up because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me.
Wow.
And there was no one left
Wow.
to speak for me. Wake up and stop seeking comfort.
Awesome. Awesome. What a mighty word that is. Listening audience, I know you heard that. That was a powerful message, because one day they could be coming as they are right now for all of us. They're coming for all of us. Reverend McDonald, take us on home, will you?
Faith without works is dead. We've already won the election. We got to go and claim it. They know we've already won. The numbers are on your side. The numbers are on your side. We've already won. All we have to do is show up. So I'm saying show up. Show up at the ballot boxes like we have never shown up before. Even though we set records in November and January past, we can do even more than we did then. Let's use the lemons that they're trying to give us, and let's make some lemonade. And I want you to join us tomorrow. I'm saying, come and join us. Come and be there and show the powers that be that we're going to teach our dollars some sense. 12 o'clock, Wesley Chapel, I-20. Look to your left. If you're traveling east, you'll see the Kentucky Fried Chicken. Right behind that is a big old store that sells lumbers and hammers and saws, that we will be there, the faith community, civil rights community, community leaders, lawyers, tomorrow at 12 to make a very important announcement.
Wow, this has been so awesome. I can't thank each of you enough for just sharing your expertise with all of us. The statements were so mighty and so powerful, and I believe the audience, I'm not sure if we had any questions. The word was so powerful that all we could do is listen and make up our mind to do something. Win, baby, win. I love that. Teach your dollars some sense. And make sure if they're not coming after you, that you're going to get yourself in position to do what we need to do. The word is vote, not just for the major elections, but all of the elections that lead up, the people who represent you. And I'm going to close out with this, the words of this song. One day when the glory comes, it will be ours. One day when the war is won, we will be sure. And then we cry glory. Do you know what glory represents? Glory represents the full weight of the glory of God. And when the glory of God is in us, then that is the essence, the pure essence of the power of God. Do you know that within each of us, we have the power of God in us? If we show up, and you have a whole bunch of people who are full of the glory, then there's a big glory cloud that is walking down. We're going to be in that glory cloud tomorrow. And then I'm telling you, the move and the power of God will be on each of us. One day when the glory comes, we have to claim the victory now in the name of the one who saved us all. His name is Jesus. He already fought the battle. He already hung on the cross. And now we got to take our position. I will see you all on next time. Next time it's going to be on May the 10th. And we're going to bring in the younger generation. Reverend Shannon Jones, I'd like to have you be with us in that gathering, because I'm bringing in the young people. You kind of fit right there in that group.
My knees hurt when it rains. And I got this pain in my neck.
Saying I'm not a young woman anymore.
Yes, you are, and I'm going to call you because I don't know how many young people, but I want your young people. I'm calling young people from all around the nation, in Miami, in Chicago.
Gotta have them.
I want to hear what they are experiencing, and we also need to hear what they have to say, because we need to be listening to they listen to us, we listen to them, and then when we come together, we can cry glory. I want to say thank you, especially to each of you, Judge Penny Brown Reynolds, Reverend Tim McDonald, and Reverend Shannon Jones, and my dear friend, Attorney Robert James. You all have blessed us with being here. Then I want to say a special note of thanks to my assistant. Her name is Faith Thomas, and without her, I could be doing absolutely nothing.
Young person.
You got to have a young person. And so bring young people around. So I'm going to be gathering up young people, and I'm going to see how many people, Reverend Timothy McDonald, that I can be with you on tomorrow. I'm going to see if I can get some boots on the ground, like Reverend Shannon Jones said, my knees when it rains and my hip hurt, but I'm coming with my boots. So thank you all so much. God bless you. I love you. And this has been awesome. And we will see you May 10th, Beacon of Hope. And we're going to bring in the young people. Start tuning in to getting your young people to be a part of us. God bless you. I love you. I thank God for you. And see you next time. One day when the glory comes, we'll be able to say glory. I'm looking for that day. Y'all take care. See you next time. Thank you, audience.